Hello YouTube, Goddard Radio Moscow here again with another beer review for you as is usual. We're going to continue on with my German series of beer reviews with you today, and we're actually going to have a look at another Heidelberg beer, and I've done 2 reviews from this brewery so far. So we're going to look at the Brauerei zum Klosterhof Heidelberg and have a little look at their Helles beer. Now this brewery is actually from Ziegelhausen, which is a little village just to the east of Heidelberg, and as I've mentioned in my previous videos, you can argue that there's 3 or 4 breweries in Heidelberg. You've got the Heidelberger Brauerei, and then you've got the 2 brew pubs, the Kulte Brauerei, and the Vetter Brauhaus, and those are the 2 local brew pubs, if you like. And then there's this brewery out in Ziegelhausen, just on the hill there. But as is usual with my beer reviews, I'll take you through a brief history of the brewery, tell you a little bit about the monastery that this beer is actually attached to in this case. But as I always say, if you are simply just interested in the tasting of this beer, then feel free to go on towards the latter part of the video and you will catch that particular segment. But anyway, this is a fairly new brewery, and it was only founded in 2009, but it's linked to a very old monastery called the Neuberg, and the monastery is actually on the northern bank of the Neckar River, which runs through the city of Heidelberg, and it's located on the southern slope of the Kopfel mountain. Now in 1130 the Neuberg monastery was established as a male-only Benedictine monastery, and apparently this was a branch of the Lorch monastery. But at the request of the first Count Palatinate Konrad von Stauffen, the Lorch abbot Sieghard of Schauenberg changed the Neuberg monastery into an independently run institution, and this was the case until 1562. Now in 1232 the Lorch monastery, which was the mother monastery of the Neuberg, as I mentioned a minute ago, was dissolved, and the rights of the Neuberg passed to the Bishop of Mainz and then the Worms monastery, and they held control of the Neuberg until 1806. Now documents have shown that the monastery was converted to a Zisterzienster monastery with the support of the Schonau monastery in 1303. Now under the Prince Elector, I believe this is the German term for the heir to the throne, and this was under Frederick I the Victorious, the monastery was actually returned to the Benedictines in the year 1460. Now at the time of the Protestant Revolution, which started in 1517, the nuns left the monastery, although this was a little bit later in 1562, and in 1562 the nuns leaving basically led to the Neuberg monastery's dissolution. And after this happened, the monastery was controlled by a woman called Brigitta, and she was the cousin of the Prince Elector Otto Heinrich, or Otto Henry as you would call him in English. And after the nuns left, she changed the building into an aristocratic home for women. But during her reign, for a period, the house was actually occupied by Prince Graf and his wife of the Stift family, and this is why today the monastery is actually known as the Stift Neuberg. Now the monastery was turned over to the Jesuits in 1706 by Prince Elector John William, and during their time they actually expanded the monastery, and it grew until the order of prohibition from Pope Clement XIV in 1773. Now the monastery also became associated with the University of Heidelberg, which is where I'm doing my master's thesis, in 1798 after the approval of the Prince Elector. However, in 1804 the monastery went into private ownership and changed hands many times. It was owned for a while by the famous German author Karl von Weber, and later it was owned by Johann Friedrich Heinrich Schlosser, who was from Frankfurt and was actually a relation and friend of the famous German writer and politician Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. And they say that the building became somewhat of a centre for Romanticism, and apparently guests included the philosopher Friedrich Schlegel and the writer Clemens Brentano. Now in 1908 the property was bought by its final private owner, which was Alexander von Bernus, and it was the meeting place of many intellectuals of the time. This included Rudolf Steiner, who was an Austrian philosopher, Stefan George, who was a German poet, Friedrich Gundolf, who was a German Jewish poet and scholar, Wilhelm Trubner, who was a painter, Klaus Mann was a German writer, then later Alex von Bernus actually sold the monastery to the Benedictine monks once again in 1926, and in 1929 Adalbert of Neuberg actually it was installed as the first abbot of the Neuberg. Now the monastery underwent renovation in the late 1940s and then again in the 1960s, and then 1988 saw the appointment of Father Francis Hieremann, the 4th abbot of Neuberg, and he actually remains in charge of the monastery until this day. today. And then later there were further renovations to the monastery in 2001 and then again in 2010. And so today there are actually a total of 15 monks living in the Neuberg, and they're actually all apparently well versed in the breeding of fish and cattle, but they're also well renowned for their horticulture. And if you actually go to the brew pub that I mentioned at the start of the video, you'll see that it has a little farm shop and everything, and it basically sells all the stuff that the monks make. You can buy fish, you can buy different beef and things like that that's marinated in a whole host of different things, and you can buy all the little plants and things that they grow there as well, so it's really cool there. But as I mentioned earlier, the brewery was actually opened in 2009, in October to be exact, and it's attached to the monastery. Their brew kit apparently is German made, but it was actually bought from a defunct brewery in Mallorca in the Balearic Islands just to the east of Spain, and they specialise in brewing organic beer initially, but in 2001 when they first started, they actually only produced the 0.33 litre bottles, but then in 2010 they changed to the 0.5 litre bottles, which you can see here, and this was with the introduction of their pills, and they've been further expanding their range ever since that time. Now the water in Heidelberg is actually one of the best in Germany, and it's very soft with low mineral content, which apparently makes it ideal for brewing beer, and they're quite proud of the fact that they've been one of the first to tap into this water source, and they don't treat it in any way, and it can go straight into the brewing process, and apparently this is very uncommon in Germany. And they also use a wide variety of malts for each of their different beers, and this allows better extraction of the sugars and thus a more rounded flavour in all of them. The brewers also like to use aromatic hops, and they have their own specialist hop farmer called Friedrich from the Hallertau region, and the brewery have a particular affection for the Cascade and Fox hops apparently, and of course their beer is brewed in accordance with the Reinheitsgebot, the German purity law of 1516. So that's a brief history of the brewery for you there. I'm sorry I was losing it a little bit at the end. I'm starting to get a little tired. I need to go back to my bed after this, after I've drank this beer. But just to tell you the other beers that the brewery do. In their classic range, they've got the amber wheat, the dark, the bright, the Keller, the Bock, the Pils, and also the wheat beer. In their seasonal range, they've got the Advent Bock, the Fox Hop, the Maibock, the Marches, and the Weizenbock. And they also have a number of seal beers that are matured in different casks as well. And you can actually also buy the beer distillate as well. And I saw that up in the farm shop when I was up there, so it was quite interesting, but I didn't buy it. I bought the two special beers that they had though, so you'll see those reviewed at a later date. But let's get on with the tasting of this guy here. Quite interested to try it for you. I'll bring up the camera and just let you have a little look at the label and stuff again. You can see the sort of outline of the Neuberg Monastery here, and you can see some of the sort of cereals and hop flowers on the label here, which is quite cool. You can see Helles beer, and then if you look at the sort of top label, you can see the bio mark. This is the thing that's quite common in Germany when you've got a sort of organic product, if you like. And on the back you can see here it actually has a little marker as well on the back there for the Brauerei, the Klosterhof Heidelberg, or Klosterhof Neuberg it actually says, and you can see here it's got the EU symbols for all the organic products and things like that. And this guy is a 4.9% Helles, and as I mentioned earlier, it's a half litre bottle. So without further ado, let's get on with the tasting of this guy and see how we get on. It's actually a decent opening. We've got a nice bit of smoke coming off it here, so let's get it out and into the glass. Very light looking beer, as you probably would guess with the Helles style. Just need to watch that the head doesn't go too crazy on it. It's one thing with the Germans, they love the heads on their beer to be just like massive basically, so you need to watch sometimes with their bottle conditioned beers, because they do go crazy like that, and you've probably seen that in a few of my videos if you've been subscribing to the channel. But I'll just get a little bit more in and then we should be okay. So as you can see, we'll just do a little look at it just now. It's quite a hazy beer. It's meant to be unfiltered actually, which is usual with a bio beer. But it's quite hazy. I can see my fingers through it. It's a little bit transparent. There's a lot of little bubbles sort of streaming up to the top there. I would describe this guy as a sort of really rich kind of straw golden colour, a hazy golden blonde colour maybe. I think you can see that quite well in the camera, but there is quite a lot of little bubbles kind of floating up to the top there. It's got a nice sort of two and a bit finger white frothy head on it there. It's not bumpy at all, definitely really frothy. I'll just put a little bit more into it there. I think I should get the rest of it in now. Not wanting to push it, but yeah, there we go. Master at pouring, I guess, but yep, we'll set this guy back down and we should be okay. But as you can see, a really attractive looking beer with a nice sort of typical German kind of convex head on it, if you like. So that's a one finger head, as you can see once it's all out. Nice hazy golden colour. But in terms of the aroma here, it's actually quite grassy, and it really, it smells like vegetables. That's the unusual thing about this guy. It smells like vegetables. It smells like the vegetable aisle in a supermarket, which is quite unusual actually. Maybe a little bit sort of chalky as well actually, but definitely big vegetables in this one, which is quite surprising. But slightly grassy at the same time, but a lot of vegetables. You can pick up just a little bit of fruit in the background, but very grassy and very sort of vegetable aromas, if you like. Maybe a little bit of grainy malts, but it really does smell like the vegetable aisle in a supermarket. And I've never encountered a beer that smells like that. I don't know if it's quite common for bio beers, but it's really unusual to smell a beer that smells like vegetables as much as this guy does. So if you get the chance, just take a little bit of time and actually smell it. It's really unusual in that sense. But let's give it a taste. So as I mentioned earlier, 4.9% Helles beer. Yeah, it follows the aroma. You can taste that vegetable taste in it actually, which is unusual. But yeah, you're opening up with a sort of bready and grainy malt base, and the vegetable flavours are overlying that all the time. Yeah, there's a really underlying, or not underlying if you like, quite a prominent vegetable flavour to this one, with a good bit of earthy character as well. But yeah, it opens up with the bready malt base with that sort of vegetable flavour there, and that stays with you throughout the beer. And then once you get past that, you're getting a sort of little grassy you're getting a little bit of grassy hop character, but that's kind of overpowered quite a bit by that vegetable flavour that I'm saying is lying over the top of it. But you're getting some citrus in the end there as well. But like I say, it really is a sort of vegetable flavour that is overpowering in this beer actually. Yeah, it actually feels a little bit chalky. It has that vegetable flavour as you go through it, it gives you a little bit of a chalky feel in the mouth, but really overpowering vegetable flavours in this guy. I keep saying it, but it really is prominent. But yeah, once you get past the prominence of the vegetable flavours, I think it's definitely a sort of bready and grainy malt base, a little hint of maybe some corny sweetness in there, but really you're getting the grassy hops coming out after, and that's the vegetable flavour becomes even more prominent once you get into the hoppy part of the beer, and the aftertaste really is that vegetable flavour kind of sticking there, and you do have just a little hint of the sort of corn sweetness mixed with the bread as well actually. In terms of the mouthfeel with this one, definitely a light to mid bodied beer, and it's actually slightly dry on the finish as well. The carbonation is actually quite prominent too. It's not overpowering and maybe is more moderate, but it is quite prominent when the flavour is quite so mild in fact. So a more prominent carbonation on this one, I would say. It's quite sharp on the front of the tongue, and the mouthfeel is slightly oily as well actually. But I guess the oily mouthfeel actually does work quite well with the sort of vegetable flavours. With this guy, I would say it's really a different type of Helles, and I'm not sure if this is a common feature with the bio beers, that they have that sort of vegetable overtone in it, but it's quite overpowering at some stages throughout the beer. And the mouthfeel is kind of quite chalky, in fact, chalky and oily mouthfeel. So I'm not sure I'm quite so much into this style of beer, I would say. It's something interesting. I need to try a few more of these bio beers, particularly the Helles style, because the other ones I had from the brewery didn't quite have this overpowering vegetable taste to them. So I'll review a few more from different breweries and see what I can get on that. But thanks again for watching my beer reviews. I hope you found it interesting. If you want to try a Helles that's a little bit different and you're into organic stuff, give this guy a try. I'm not sure how kind of widely available it is outside of Germany, but there's a lot of the sort of bio marts in Germany. If you are watching, give it a try and see what you think. When I went into the one in Heidelberg, there was a few different brands of beer, but I didn't buy them up because I still had these guys to review for you. So if you do get the chance and you're watching from Germany, give them all a try. And if you're watching as well, let me know in the comments section if this is quite a common feature with the bio beers. It's always interesting to hear that, and indeed let me know your own thoughts on this particular beer as well. So I hope you found this beer review informative today. I hope it's I got another good brewery that you can have a little look at, and if you're in Heidelberg, go up to the Philosophenweg, and then on the way down visit the brewery. I would recommend the Dunkel beer. The Dunkel beer is actually probably my favourite one from the brewery. But have a little try of these guys and let me know what you think. Thanks for your continued support over my beer reviews, and please like, subscribe, share, or all the usual YouTube stuff. Thanks again for your support, and I'll catch you soon with another beer review. Cheers.